let's bring in our guy, Brad Spielberger, Pro Football Focus, as we turn our attention to free agency and the salary cap, and nobody knows it better than Brad. And Brad, we really appreciate you taking time. First time on the CHGO Bears podcast. Thank you, sir. Good to see you.
Great to see you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
So, but before we get into this, any of the actual players and some of the minutia of all this, how much money do the Bears have, Brad? I've seen 90 million. I've seen 148 million. I've seen 94 million. Can you? And then there's the actual amount that they could spend. How is that actually worded? It's the effective cap number, which the Bears on one post I saw today, 94 million. Their effective cap space is 85 million. They know they have the most money. We know that, but can you break down exactly how much dough the Bears have?
Yep. So the last figures you mentioned there, 94 million in cap space, and the effective cap space is basically us just filling your roster to 53 players or inputting your rookie pool as it stands today. Obviously, the first overall pick would add a big chunk to the salary cap in year one. So, like you said, either way, it's a ton more than anybody else. It is not really an issue for them. If they want to add a ton of players, they can do that pretty easily.
Brad, as a cap savant, let me ask you this. When you look at the Bears and all the cap space, the draft capital, the needs, what excites you most about what Ryan Poles can do in 2023?
Yeah, I think you can truly blend this draft and the free agency to both focus on, okay, Justin Fields is going into his third year of his rookie deal. Let's say hypothetically he is going to become that, big money extension player that we all hope he's going to be. You want to capitalize on this year and next year before the fifth year option. And then, of course, this hypothetical massive extension that, would be the greatest, contract that, they could ever sign. So I think in free agency, I've had conversations, not to get into particular players, but I don't think they're going to be afraid of 29, 30-year-old guys with the idea that those players help them the next couple of years. And then your draft class, you're building for the future and getting some teammates of Fields' hopefully for the next, 5-10 years.
Now, I saw a comment that just came up, and it's been through our mind. We've talked about in the show a few times that there's like a minimum amount that the Bears actually have to spend this year with that cap. Brad, if you don't know the number, that's okay. But could you explain why there's a minimum and how that's kind of like, I don't know, like computed or however you want to phrase it. But I'm just curious, like how that kind of works.
Yeah, so the NFL has a structure where every team over certain tranches of years, as of right now, it's 2021 to 2023, they have to spend 90% of the cumulative cap over those 3 years in cash. So, just hypothetically, if there were three $100 million caps, they'd have to spend $270 million total over those 3 years. This past season, with a $208 million cap, the Bears spent about $145 million. They were dead last by a significant margin. They spent about a half as much that the LA Rams did in cash this year. That's how cheap they were in clearing the book. So they also were a little bit below in 2021. So for 2023, they need to spend, on top of what they already have spent, another $150 million, I think it is off the top of my head, which of course can come via internal extensions for Cole Kmet and Darnell Mooney. It's not just, external free agents, but they're going to have to be one of the biggest spenders in all of free agency. I know Ryan Poles has stressed, which is smart, that you're not trying to go crazy and make these big splashes all the time. To a degree, they're going to have to make one or two big deals this offseason.
So, Brad, if the Bears wanted to bank dough for next year, right? We're not exactly sure where we're at. We want to load up on the draft, and we're going to try to improve that way, and we're going to pick a wide receiver in the draft. We're going to give Justin Fields Njimba and say, hey, roll with your Ohio State guy. And they just wanted to bank as much dough as possible for 2024. What's the least amount? Do you have an answer on that they could spend this offseason and try to just parlay this into one more, kick the can down the road 1 year? I don't think they're going to do that, but I'm curious. I'm sure they're looking at all options.
Yeah, so they have to get to a number of around 240, 245 million in cash spent this year to hit that minimum, right? Because it's a 3-year rolling minimum that ends after this upcoming year. So they can't be super cheap again, but they could, in theory, only spend about an additional 120 million, could get them into that range. I think I said 150, about an additional 120 to get into that range. I think another smart way to go about it is they could wait to see if a couple guys, maybe Jalen Johnson, for example, don't extend guys like that right away. Chase Claypool, obviously another example. And then maybe during the season, if they've seen progression, they then feel more comfortable with those guys. Maybe you then pull the trigger, but you leave yourself a little bit of wiggle room if you don't think they've grown, that you don't go ahead and make those moves.
Brad, real quickly, I think David Montgomery is I want to say polarizing in a way for Bears fans. Do you pay him? Do you not? What would a number look like that would be fair for the Bears, fair for him, obviously being a running back and just how they're kind of paid nowadays? But what's kind of like your opinion on David Montgomery and what the Bears might do with him moving forward?
Yeah, it's always good to see. So my projection on our site, I do the top 100 free agents on the contracts. I had him at 3 years, $19.5 million. And I was happy to see that a recent article from The Athletic with Kevin Fishbane, an agent told him he thinks 3 years, $19 million. So I think we see that similar vein. Yeah, right around, $6.5 million per year. For me, that's based off of James Conner, Leonard Fournette, the guys last offseason that got right in that range, 3 years, $6-7 million per year. Look, I think he's a good player. I think he is a 3-down player, can pass protect, can catch passes, but he's just not very explosive, and I don't think can take the top off and have those big, 80-yard touchdown runs. You're just not really going to see that from him. So I think he's in that middle tier. And look, I don't know if Chicago is willing to go there, but that's not, going to break the bank by any means.
Now, obviously, it's not just signing guys. The Bears may actually create more space by cutting some players with some bigger cap hits heading this season. I know a bigger name I see floated around a lot is Cody Whitehair, just due to him not playing up to the contract that he's currently on. And I know the Bears can save a pretty penny by doing so. But when I was looking at your PFF articles about surprise cuts or just players that could be cut, I was actually pretty surprised to see the Bears player that you had listed.
Yeah, so I hear you 110%, and I do think I kind of alluded to it. Look, in a vacuum, no team is ever going to say, hey, we need to spend money, so we're going to let a player that is not playing up to the level of his contract just stick around. And I don't think Cody Whitehair has been remotely good enough. I think you could probably argue, guys like Al-Quadin Muhammad, guys like Lucas Patrick also probably aren't playing up to the level of their current contracts. I kind of just kept it there because they need help at offensive line. I think they could convince themselves, Cody Whitehair, maybe with getting healthy another year in this system, and then Lucas Patrick, obviously, getting healthy from all his various ailments, maybe finally getting stuck at center and not moving around seemingly every week. But, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if either of those guys gets let go. I think it was more just, why would we cut offensive linemen? Might be a question to ask themselves.
And for the record, free agency officially begins, if my math is correct, in 27 days. Correct, Brad?
March 15th, but we'll see deals the 13th because of that legal tampering window that we always get.
All right. Make a prediction, Brad. I look at your top 100. You've got Javon Hargrave at number 3 overall, but you don't have him getting the biggest contract. You've got him at 3 years and $55 million. Which is less than some of the guys that you have ranked below him, which I find very interesting. I would think that would be interesting to the Bears. It's certainly a position of need. If you had to guess at one guy who the Bears will sign, who are you taking?
Hargrave is a good answer, but I'll go with Mike McGlinchey, the right tackle for the San Francisco 49ers. If I had to just pick one splashy name, he's a right tackle in a wide zone system. I do think he is going to reach free agency. I don't think they're going to tag him. I don't think they're going to find a multi-year deal for him, which, you're probably alluding to Daron Payne. As much as I'd love for Daron Payne to be a Bear, I think he is going to get franchise tagged in Washington.
Oh, that's disappointing to hear. I like Daron Payne, but that's all right. If it happens, it happens. I asked some of the commenters who are watching right now, Brad, to just ask some questions, and I want to read off this one from Bro Delicious, interesting name. He said, I want to know how the best teams are composed under the cap. It seems like most of them have 4 to 5 taking up the majority of the cap. People see the Bears cap and think we get in 3 to 4 elite level guys.
I think it varies team to team. I mean, for example, look at the Philadelphia Eagles. They don't really have these massive deals. They have about 7 or 8 like mid-tier guys. Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, Jordan Mailata, all in the 14 to 16 million per year range. So, I think at the end of the day, everything kind of funnels down from quarterback. I know it's maybe an oversimplification, but if you have a quarterback making $49, $50 million, everything else kind of trickles down from there. I think that, look, the top-heavy approach, if you are the LA Rams or whatever team you want to throw in there, can work to a degree. I think the more sustainable approach over the long haul is you get your best internal players signed to early extensions as soon as you can, and you're going to get discounts on those deals. I mentioned the Eagles. Jordan Mailata making $16 million a year is insane. He's worth over 20. Josh Sweat making $14 million a year is also insane. So I personally think you want to get like 8 to 10, highly paid players. Although, again, of course, quarterback, kind of complicates that entire equation.
I like this question in the comments from Reese too. Just wanting to hear about like Keenan Allen and maybe if there are any other wide receiver potential cap casualties that you can foresee right now.
Yeah, so Allen, I think, does make sense. I guess not a cap casualty, but I would be surprised if DeAndre Hopkins is not traded by like the end of March. I don't think he's going to be an Arizona Cardinal much longer. So another name there. Yeah, right. There's not a ton of great cap casualty names this year, but I do think, I know people are going to love this. It's probably not going to happen in March, but I think T. Higgins eventually is going to become a player that teams are going to start making calls on, and Cincinnati is eventually, if they can't find a common ground, going to be starting answering those phone calls. Again, not right away, but I think it is going to happen eventually. So, yeah, unfortunately, the free agent market and the cap casualty market don't look super strong. But, him, maybe Brandon Ayuk in San Francisco, if they don't want to pay another player, eventually those phone calls are going to get answered.
Hey, Brad, are you a Justin Fields fan?
Big time.
Okay, so just making sure we're all on the same page here. So you would say that it's a fair assessment that he'll make the same leap from year 2 to 3 that he did from year 1 to 2?
I would certainly hope so, and I really do think it's reasonable to predict that you get. I mean, the circumstances were the worst in the NFL. I know I saw a comment about our offensive line grading. Look, if you do true pass sets, not to get too in the weeds here, but if you do true pass sets, which takes away screenplays, play action, stuff like that, they were dead last for us in pass protection grades. So, I know it's tough. We can't put out every single metric. And look, I'm not saying, you can make fun of PFF all you want, but like they're not good. We know they're not good. I think if you help him out, get him some healthy pass catchers and a better offensive line, he should take a quantum leap next year.
Okay.
Quantum.
So okay, I like it. And when Colin Cowherd is saying that the Bears his protection is not bad. They're 14th. You're sitting there in Brad Spielberger land saying, what the hell are you talking about, Colin?
Unfortunately, it's hard to put out every single thing that we do, but no, yeah, on actual dropbacks where he's, it's not like I say, little pass plays, getting the ball out quickly, which we saw from Luke Getsy. I mean, that's kind of their offense, right? When you truly break it down it's a standard drop back and they have to hold up and pass protect for over 2 seconds. They were dead last in the NFL for us this year. So yeah, I respectfully disagree with Colin Cowherd.
You're right. And the long way around here, my point is that if Fields makes the same jump, what type of dough do you think he's getting next year?
I mean, look, you're going to get Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, maybe all these dudes getting these massive, massive contracts. If he does make that leap, let's say even just like Jalen Hurts year 3, right? Year 2 to year 3, Jalen Hurts. I mean, it's going to be over $50 million a year. Like I said, though, again, that'd be a great problem to have. I would love it. They can, I'll throw money in a GoFundMe and I'm all in on that.
That could have been how we did the stadium funding earlier. Carl.
Yes. Yep. Brad, real quickly, kind of shifting over to one of his teammates, one of the reliable players on offense, Cole Kmet. He's, obviously due for an extension. And what is he worth? Like, obviously he had a good season last year, especially the touchdown production. But in your eyes, what's a Cole Kmet worth in terms of an extension?
Yeah, look, I know Bears fans are going to balk at this. I put a tweet out, I think, in like November, December, saying he was going to get at least $12 million a year, and everyone was like, what the heck are you talking about? So the tight end, and he's going to get more than that. The tight end market is very strange to where, like, there's been this cap at the top. George Kittle signed for $15 million a year in around 2020. Darren Waller technically surpassed it this offseason, but not really. And basically everyone has come in below that. Travis Kelce also. It's kind of just like Gronk back in the day. You can't argue that you're worth more than these top tight ends. So that being said, like David Njoku getting above $13 million a year, Dawson Knox getting $13 million a year, Cole Kmet is not noticeably worse than Dawson Knox. Like, he isn't. And I think at a position that takes a lot of time to grow, he's still very young. Look, I don't think he's ever going to become a guy that's going to be separating against man coverage or winning, on downfield routes. But he is an above-average blocker at the position, and he can catch the ball close to the line of scrimmage and, get some yards after the catch, show some red zone prowess this year. So anyway, long answer short, I think it's going to be a 4 or 5 year deal around $13.5 million a year.
Okay.
Going back to just like the cap in general, and I know Carm was asking about like how far the Bears could maybe kick that can down the road again. But what about like spending money now, but like moving it or just being like flexible with it? Like, how could the Bears still make, some additions, some signings this year and be flexible? And how should they be wary of that with Fields' upcoming potential contract situation? Because I remember a former Bears GM, also named Ryan, last name started with a P, who loved to backload contracts. And I think that's why Poles had to like do what he did last offseason, just due to all of that money just that kept getting pushed and pushed. So how should the Bears kind of approach this newfound sense of financial freedom?
Yeah, so Carm, if I misunderstood you before, I apologize. So it's a great question. I think what they can do is, to a degree, you don't go crazy, but is to front load deals this offseason. So we're talking about cap now, and if you're trying to save some of that cap and, like you said, not be R1P1, that's what I call them, R2P2 and R1P1, and push all this cap into the future, you can do, for example, what San Francisco did with Jimmy Garoppolo, which was they put a massive roster bonus in the first year of his deal when he first got there. So instead of a big signing bonus that gets spread out over the full contract, you pay a lot of it from a cash and cap standpoint right up front. I do think they are going to do that to a degree. I'm not going to go crazy with it, but I do think that is going to be what you're going to see is some of these deals are going to be, the cap hits are going to be larger in year one. Here's another example too. The Jets did it with Corey Davis and Carl Lawson because they had a ton of cap space when they started adding these guys. If they want to cut either of those players this offseason, the dead money is six figures. It's less than $1 million because they didn't give these massive signing bonuses and then restructure over and over again like Pace did. I shouldn't have said his name. But yeah, so anyway, that's what I think they do there to save themselves long term.
And just in general philosophy, paying up front early is way smarter if you can do it. It gives you more flexibility on the back end, which is what you want. The Bears are in the position if they want to do that. I hope they do. And by the way, I'd like to throw out an option here that should be available that I guess is illegal, but I think it should be made legal. To your point about keeping flexibility here, if this makes sense, Will, why can't the Bears all of a sudden at the back end of year 3 when Fields is crushing it, why can't they just give him a huge bonus right there? Hey, thanks so much for everything you did this year, Justin, and let's apply that to his next contract. Like, let's eat up all the money that's left over. We should be able to do that, Brad.
That'd be lovely. You can do it to a degree. So, for Mooney and Kmet this offseason, for example, like you're going to store some of that signing bonus money in the 4th year of their rookie contract. It's not all going to apply to the new years. But yeah, it'd be nice with Fields if you could just give him a big old chunk of money before he's even eligible, just to make things even easier to build around him.
That'd be nice if things can work out, how we hypothetically think they can work.
Yeah.
Real quickly, Brad, I have one more question from our commenters here. It's from Doug. He asked, do you think the Bears can improve their O-line in free agency more than in the draft? I don't know how much you've gotten into the draft right now, but got to say I'm on the side of drafting a whole new O-line except for Jenkins and Jones.
I think there are some decent options. So I mentioned McGlinchey at right tackle. I'm not as big on Caleb McGarry as other people, but I think he's a solid right tackle that, again, fits the system. For me, a center I love is Ethan Pocic with the Cleveland Browns. I don't think he's going to break the bank. I think some people think he's going to get more than I think he's going to get $7-8 million a year, which at center I think is fine, kind of in that second tier of players. The guards, I think, are a lot of more guys that fit in gap schemes. I'm not sure that not the greatest athletes. You could go after Isaac Sumalo from the Eagles. I think he's probably going to get the biggest deal of any guard. But yeah, I think if you can get a starting center and a starting right tackle on 3-4 year deals, then you can mess around in the draft. I will say I'll pour cold water. I've been pissing off a lot of people, but the Bears using a top 2-round pick on an interior offensive lineman with the state of their current roster is just not a good use of resources. Like when you're picking this high and you're trying to you have the worst defensive line in the NFL. You have one of the worst. You need to be spending these premium picks on premium positions, this early in the draft.
Completely agree. Will, you got one here, or I'm going to jump into my Bobby Okereke?
Hey, I just did a video on him this week that is going to be published here soon. But yeah, I want to hear in Brad's words why he believes, if he believes, the Chicago Bears are an attractive free agent destination this offseason.
It's a great question. I really think they are. I mean, first and foremost, cash rules everything around us,
Yep.
So that helps. But no, I mean, look, so Chicago is an attractive destination. It's a major city. They, I think, are clearly making efforts to be more, player friendly, more from both from the perspective of just like sports science and the facilities for their players. But also, I think it is meaningful that McCaskey is trying to create new initiatives like, supporting Black players and doing things that actually the players actually care about. I don't think those things go unnoticed. So, yeah, for me it is. And getting to play with Justin Fields, it always matters too. What other players around the league are saying, these guys think Justin Fields is a superstar, right? I mean, it's going to attract players to come here. So, yeah, long answer short, I do think it is a place that players want to come to.
All right. Bobby Okuriki. That's how he said his own name. So I think I have it right. And I see people in the chat saying that I'm saying it wrong. I don't know if our guy Jimmy is joking or not. We need help everywhere, and I know the Bears don't want to pay for linebackers, Brad, but I like this guy. He's young. He's got an interesting pedigree. He's gotten better every year he's in the league. Do you think he could be a good value buy?
110%. I think he's a player they should be calling the first day of free agency. I mean, I think he is going to be in that second tier. Look, I was against giving Roquan Smith $20 million a year. I'm not against paying to get a solid player at that position, or maybe even a couple for the mid-tier deal. I think he's going to get around $8-9 million a year. And I think the connection to Matt Eberflus matters a lot, not just from the standpoint of, he knows the system and all that, but they clearly care a lot about the culture and the players they have in the building. And by all accounts, he fits that mold 110%. Eberflus loves him, and vice versa. So I think he's a guy, like, if I had to, again, make a prediction, like, I think he's a future Bear in about a month here.
Brad, real quickly, you tweeted about Aaron Rodgers earlier today, and obviously the quarterback dominoes, however they fall, will affect the Bears in some way in terms of when teams are going to move up, how they're going to move up. What's the situation with Aaron Rodgers? Can he be traded before June 1st? What's kind of the deal there?
Yeah, so he can. And I know, his contract is extremely complicated. He can be traded. And realistically, even ignoring the cap thing for the Packers, if you're another team, you're not going to bring in a quarterback that's going to be owed $60 million next year. Like, basically what happens is each team gets a cash budget from their owner, probably in February, early March. And they say, all right, here's how much you have to spend this year. They want to know before free agency. Or if you're a team that's interested in Rodgers, or you're just going to sit there and, like, not sign guys because you don't know if you're going to pay him. So yeah. So I think he's going to be – this is just a guess, but I think he's going to be a Las Vegas Raider within a month. Is my guess. Yeah, they're not going to wait till June 2nd because the other teams aren't going to wait, not because the Packers caps situation.
Brad, phenomenal stuff. You are always on top of it, and we really appreciate you making time. But before you go, I think everybody has to weigh in on – I love these looks from Will where he doesn't know where I'm going to go. Before you go, I want to know, what percentage of you thinks that the Bears would be right – to considering the number that you just threw out, if Justin Fields has a great year of $50 million, and everybody be happy to pay him if he did, but how much would you be entertaining what Fields is actually worth and looking at the quarterbacks that are coming out?
So for next year, you mean not this year?
I'm saying you're going to make you are going to draft Bryce Young because if people are calling him mini Mahomes, and you're going to make the best possible deal you can make with Fields and add on to all the draft capital and build your team that way.
So, look, I love Bryce Young. I really, really do. But I would stick with Fields. I would not trade him at this point. I think you try to trade down from one and add around him. I will say this. Again, I also love Justin Fields. I think it's a different conversation if it's Caleb Williams and Drake May. But I still probably I don't know. Yeah. To answer your question, Bryce Young, love the guy. I want Justin Fields under center in 2023.
All right. I don't think there's going to be any pushback on the show from that take.
He's not even as tall as Mina Kimes. We all saw the picture. It's all accurate.
Hey, we'll talk about this in a second. But there was good news, I think, on the Bears draft front yesterday. Brad, great stuff. Thanks so much. We look forward to having you on again.
Thank you, guys. Sounds good.